key architect of this approach was forensic expert Dr. Henry Lee, who contended the police were not only inept, they were also corrupt.
Henry Lee says that those blood swatches are basically tampered with sometime in the evening or the early morning hours of June 13th.
Considered the world's most famous crime scene analyst, Dr. Lee has built that reputation by assisting on over 6,000 cases around the country. At the trial, his testimony ended with a controversial conclusion.
Only opinion I can giving under this circumstance, something wrong.
To help in their independent investigation of Bill Deere's theory of the murders, investigators Derek Levasseur and Chris Mahandi have invited Dr. Lee to go over the evidence presented at trial.
As a police officer, I received my education on textbooks written by Henry Lee. So having an opportunity to break down one of the biggest cases in American history is huge.
What does the evidence that you've reviewed tend to point towards in terms of what actually occurred that evening?
It's difficult with this particular case. The scene wasn't secured too well, so you have a lot of red flag with this case. The crime scene, we only look at it through the photographer's eye.
You're limited by what was provided to you.
Whatever they choose to take a picture.
The LAPD did not allow Dr. Lee to visit the crime scene until 12 days after the murders. By then, he was only able to view the evidence through official crime scene photographs.
Okay, here, this picture depicts Nicole's body. We'll observe 7 vertical, low-velocity passive dripping, blood dripping down. When we pointed out, they said they did not see it. ME's office, they cleaned the body, did the autopsy.
Those 7 drops of blood that were found on her back were never tested to determine whether it came from the killer.
They washed it.
Had they tested that blood that was on her back and it was determined to be O.J. Simpson's blood?
Case closed.
Dr. Lee says that while the untested blood from Nicole's back is troubling, photos of Ron's body raise additional questions.
As you can see, Ron Goldman, his head, have a lot of injury. That's a slash wound. Also, loss of half of the fingernail. That kind of injury, you're probably in a close hand-to-hand combat.
You examined O.J. Did he have any bruises consistent with that on his body?
I did not find any.
The only marking Dr. Lee did find was a cut on O.J.'s left middle finger, which O.J. claimed came from handling a broken glass in his Chicago hotel room.
And what type of cuts do those look like to you?
This is a curvature type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Would that be consistent with O.J.'s explanation of it being a glass?
It could be. If you throw the glass, smash the glass, depends on your finger.
Incompetence is one thing, but Dr. Lee's investigation led the defense team to believe that the LAPD's actions were possibly corrupt. He found troubling contradictions with a pair of bloody socks found in O.J.'s bedroom that tested positive for both Nicole and O.J.'s blood.
The theory is Nicole grabbed O.J.'s ankle and caused the blood transfer onto the socks. The only problem is laboratory's result shows one side outside found blood, then inside found blood. The other side, inside had blood,
right.
Outside no blood.
And for Dr. Henry Lee, there's only one way to explain this.
No foot in between the socks.
Yeah.
The socks not having a foot in it and the blood literally being dropped onto it in order to create that.
They have a videotape from O.J.'s house. Here's the carpet. We did not see an image of a socks.
So in the top left corner, that was taken at 3:13 p.m. on June 13th. There's no sock in there. And in the photograph underneath, which was presumably taken after by the evidence collection team, the sock should be in both of those. They don't match.
During the trial, the defense team pushed the theory that the LAPD planted evidence by pointing out that lead detective Philip Van Adder took an evidentiary vial of O.J.'s blood to the crime scene.
How many times have you taken blood from Parker Center out to a crime scene?
I don't know, this may have been the first time.
The prosecution also had to deal with a discrepancy over how much blood investigators took from O.J. while he was in custody and how much remained in the vial.
There are 1.5 cc's missing, and that's some of the blood that was tampered in this case. That's very important, isn't it?
That's the tube supposed to have 8 cc there. We only come to about 6.5 cc.
In other words, it is possible that it came from a vial of blood and very carefully dripped so that not too much was used. Is that correct?
It's possible. We have EDTA found on the blood sample. How come have EDTA?
EDTA is a blood preservative. When an individual goes to the doctor and has blood drawn, it's normally in a vial and contains a cap. Surrounding that cap is EDTA crystal. That is to preserve the blood for testing at a later date.
So this EDTA, you can't just ignore.
Wow.
The worst case scenario here is purposeful
planting.
I'm a cop, and I want to believe the best in all the guys that work out in the field, but I can't discredit Dr. Henry Lee, who knows way more about criminal forensics than I ever will.
But Dr. Lee says perhaps the best example of the LAPD's shoddy investigation is a piece of evidence they chose to ignore.
We found possible 2 track of a shoe print. That's Bruno Magli. Here, next to it, is a different type of shoes.
O.J.'s pair of Bruno Malley shoes famously connected him to the shoe prints at Bundy, but Dr. Lee says the evidence suggests there was a separate set of prints at the crime scene.
Could it be the Bruno Magli shoe?
No.
We see Bruno Magli here.
Right there.
We see a parallel line here.
So you're saying right in that picture, that close to Nicole's head, you have 2 sets of shoe prints?
Yes.
Do you know for sure that the second set of shoe prints was not Bruno Malley shoe?
Of course, it's with line design.
If there is a second set of bloody shoe prints, it's a game changer. It definitely points to the possibility there was more than one person involved in this crime somehow.
Dr. Lee, could that second set of shoe prints been from one of the detectives walking the scene?
All the investigators say we did not wear this kind of shoes, so you eliminate them.
How many of the second set of shoe prints did you find at the scene?
We look at it probably 4. This is a diagram, shows some shoe prints.
Lee's diagram shows the second set of shoe prints going up the stairs and through the walkway.
However, sometimes footprints not visible. So we ask, can we use chemical enhancement? The answer is no, we cannot use any chemical, we cannot use any light sources.
Why didn't they let you enhance it?
Your guess is as good as my guess.
To show how the chemical test would have helped the police investigation, the team has asked Dr. Lee to demonstrate the technique on a recreation of Nicole's front steps.
Let's say, step into the blood. The first contact, you can actually see bloody footprint. If somebody keep walking, you're going to get less and less, and finally you don't see anything anymore. So let's show you an enhancement.
Oh, wow.
You can see it actually getting darker. What is the chemical reaction that's causing that?
With the hemoglobin. You see here?
Yep.
Yes.
Before it's not showing, now it's become visible.
LAPD didn't let you do it, and they didn't do it, so we missed out on all this valuable
We missed out
information.
valuable information at the crime scene.
All of this leads the team to ask Dr. Lee the obvious question about his investigation.
Do you believe there were 2 assailants there?
Let the evidence speak for itself. I think 2 individuals there. The physical evidence suggests could be a second person.
Dr. Henry Lee does raise some good questions. 20 plus years later, that's our challenge, this retrospective analysis being fair and impartial.
And finally, the investigators want Dr. Lee's take on a key piece of Bill Deere's evidence.
If the watch Nicole Simpson was wearing went down and hit, the picture would have been taken at the scene and it indicated 9:59. Would that change anything?
That's a really important discovery because when we investigate the case, never see a picture of a watch because we only get the crime scene photo from LAPD.
Why did the LAPD never show this picture to Dr. Lee? This photo could point to the murders being committed at a different time than we thought, and potentially to someone other than OJ. We're gonna have to keep digging to get to the truth.